Put another way, yo, Mitch, I'm looking at you. Oh, wait, I'm looking at Jessica Anderson. Joining me now to discuss all this is the Executive Director, Heritage for Action, for America. What am I talking about? Jessica Anderson, great to see you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, what in the world is Mitch McConnell doing here? Help me out. I mean, why? Here we go. And by the way, omnibus, schmomnibus, I can't deal with it. Go ahead, tell me what McConnell's doing here.
Well, look, I don't aim to be inside Mitch McConnell's head, but I will tell you this: if you are the leader of the Senate, and earlier this year you come out and you say that the Senate should not run on a plan, and then you're faced with an end of the year spending bill shenanigans like we have now, and which Congressman Roy, I think, very well articulated, it's no surprise that Mitch McConnell does not have a plan. The plan here is not to support conservatives. It is not to put the wishes of the American people before this political posturing of the swamp. And unfortunately, it doesn't have to be like this. They could have reverted to a continuing resolution where they simply changed the date and punt this decision into the new Congress. Instead, they've turned over the keys of all of the policy priorities for the next year to Democrats and their control as they exist in the chambers now, instead of waiting for January or February to deal with this. So I'm with Congressman Roy. It's frustrating, and there's a lot more that needed to have been done here.
Is there a chance, though, that they might not get a full deal and they could boot this over to the new year? Like, because Christmas is coming up on, Sunday, so they've got to get this done by Thursday. What's your sense?
Well, there's always a chance that things can fall apart in Washington, and we shouldn't lose hope throughout the next few days as the negotiations continue. But my sense is that those in the Democratic House, the Democratic Senate, aided and abetted by very weak Republicans, have wanted to have an omnibus all along because they don't want the fight. They don't want to actually follow through with what the American people have sent them here to do. And so it's easier to just go along under the guise of, well, we don't have the majority, so what more can we do, instead of fighting. What I think the options would have been, David, for conservatives to say, no more IRS harassment, no more harassment from the DOJ. Let's actually secure the border. Let's protect parents, our schools. Let's get our top line spending under control. There's a whole list of issues, and use the leverage of the end of the year spending bill to get this right. Instead, they threw up their hands, and now we're faced with an omnibus this week.
Jessica, what's in here exactly? I mean, I understand there's going to be an increase in aid to Ukraine without any sort of oversight whatsoever. What else? Because I know that what about immigration? I mean, what are we talking about? Also, what about all the earmarks that are in this as well?
Well, the package is chock full of earmarks, and that certainly will be a big headline coming from the bill. The Ukraine aid is troublesome because there's no transparency or accountability from the previous aid packages that have passed. But everything that's in this Omni is chock full of the left's spending priorities, including on climate change, tax extenders, DOJ, the new funding for the new IRS agents. Everything that we fought against all year is now repackaged in this omnibus. And it's going forward during a lame duck. And, Congress Roy is mentioning that in his floor comments, just how crazy it is that you've got a new Congress coming in less than 3 weeks. But yet during a lame duck, when people are heading out the door, we're passing a huge leftward radical spending bill for their priorities, not ours.
Yeah, and then we're talking about the debt, deficit, and all the spending. You've got budget stalwart Rand Paul. He obviously hates this bill. He's focusing in on all of the financial aspects of this and the debt. Here he is quickly the other day.
One other thing for your viewers, balancing the budget. How hard would it be if we passed 2019's budget, a budget from 3 or 4 years ago? If we pass that today, the budget would balance. That's how much spending has grown over the last 3 or 4 years. All the COVID spending is now built in. Nobody's going back towards the normal baseline. All that COVID spending's baked in, and we're bankrupting the country, and we're adding debt faster than we've ever added it in the history of the country.
See, this is what we've been talking about for a while. See, I know you're shaking your head because that COVID spending, see, this is it. Take COVID, you got a crisis, and then boom, in Washington, crisis equals more money, emergency powers, and here we are. I'm curious to get your take on all that.
It's absolutely remarkable what's happened to the discussion of spending. I mean, no one that is a leader right now in Washington is even talking about cutting spending. And so what's so frustrating, I think, to myself, to the American people, to the grassroots activists, to your listeners, David, is that if we can balance our budget and our homes with our families, our kids' schools, all of our mandatory spending and discretionary spending that needs to happen, why can't the federal government? And why is there not an honest conversation about these spending levels? I mean, that's not even, honestly, it's not even on the debate. We're over here haggling over whether there should be Ukraine aid. Well, what about the larger top line spending? No one's even talking about that. Very few of us are. Rand Paul, of course, is. Others are. But it's such a slim majority, and it's completely unfair. And it's out of touch with what the American people expect from our elected officials.
Yeah, and then as we move forward, as we wrap up here, we move forward, and we've got the House, a GOP, or House controlled by the GOP slightly, but it's still controlled. How much do you think that will make a difference? I mean, are we looking at gridlock, a lot of gridlock next year and in the next 2 years?
I believe so. And I actually would argue that that's a good thing, because by definition, if Joe Biden is signing something, it can't be very good for the American people. And so gridlock might actually be a good thing and a nice change of pace for Washington. I think the House GOP needs to focus on investigations, on oversight, on doing the things that they can do with their majority. And mind you, the House GOP is likely to come out within the next, hopefully 10 or 12 hours, opposed to this omnibus. That's important because Kevin McCarthy needs to whip against this bill and have the back of conservatives that have been opposed all year.
For sure. Jessica Anderson, great to see you. By the way, a quick little Dr. Phil question. How are you doing after the midterm elections? You did so much work. How is the decompression going, or has there been much time for decompression?
Well, I walked through all stages of grief. And I'm back on the road to being a relentless optimist, to knowing that our job is not yet done as conservatives. We have to consider to continue to build a conservative political ecosystem that is separate than the Washington establishment if we are ever going to win these important races.
Jessica Anderson, really appreciate you here. We appreciate you here at the show. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful Christmas.